And welcome back to episode 2 of Caesar Time. Trevor here, and we are going to dive deeper into the community and the human flourishing of Mark Antony after Caesar's death. So in the last episode, I talked about introducing Mark Antony, his role in the earlier chapters, and also the introduction of the conspirators, and also all the events that led up to Caesar's death. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into Act 3, which is where everything happens, and there is a turning point through it all. So, as mentioned, Act 3, Scene 1, was when Julius Caesar was assassinated by everybody, by all the senators that stood against him, wanting to retain a government rather than an empire and to keep him from power, all that they concerned to it. And what we see in terms of Mark Antony, we're seeing his loyalty growing towards Caesar, and it's leading to him being concerned about his safety, and also understanding that there's now a target on him now because he was a loyal follower of Caesar. And in Act 1, when they killed Caesar, Cassius wanted to kill Mark Antony. He wanted Mark Antony dead. But Brutus basically stopped Cassius and basically said, Mark Antony doesn't pose as a threat. So we're seeing that in terms of flourishing between Cassius and Brutus, we're seeing that Brutus is growing more loyal to Antony, understanding, okay, yeah, they did something horrible, but Mark Antony's not going to, mess them up and, ruin their plan. But Cassius, on the other hand, is very concerned about it. He's very concerned about about Mark Antony's presence and concerned about the power that he holds now, that he could literally turn Rome upside down against him if need to be. And this is where in Scene 2, in the next scene, this was the funeral of Caesar. This was a big thing. This was huge because this is what sparked the turning point into the Roman Empire, the lead to the fall of the Roman Empire, and also the community and the plan of the conspirators going up in flames, basically. So Antony agreed. So Antony basically gets tapped to do a speech at Caesar's funeral, to do a little eulogy for him, basically talking about Caesar, how important he was to it, and other things to it. And what the conspirators don't know, what Brutus and Cassius don't know, is Mark Antony is going to use this because they think that he's going to agree with the conspirators. He thinks that he is going to boast the conspirators' image even deeper and even more into it, because that's what, he agreed to do. He agreed to do that. And I think that's why, in terms of flourishing, Brutus was very, very upright about it and knew that Antony was not going to pose a threat, but Antony was not basically showing his cards when he had them. And so at this funeral, obviously, the crowd is still distraught. There's still all the Roman citizens are just in daze right now because of the assassination of Caesar, still not knowing why it happened. And they all gather for his funeral, bury him, and then Mark Antony goes on to give his speech of Julius Caesar. And basically, in terms of this, he uses the occasion, he uses the funeral, uses everybody gathered up, and he uses the time that he has to incite the crowd to turn on the conspirators. Because the crowd was already against the conspirators. And it was already like, okay, so these people murdered Caesar, and and we don't know why, and they're gonna lead to something else into it. And what he does in this funeral eulogy is he emphasizes the generosity of Caesar. He emphasizes that, Caesar was not a bad guy. He was not that horrible dictator that everyone believed he was. The conspirators thought he was. And another thing that he does with this crowd is he also begins to throw in the question of whether was Caesar ambitious, was he power hungry, was he a guy that was just out for power and was just trying to be the most powerful dictator out there and had no benefits for Rome and for the Roman citizens. And this crowd, instead of, going on peacefully and things like that, they begin to incite a riot, and they begin to start rioting over it and starting to turn on the conspirators, as we see in scenes 3, 4, and 5 of Act 3. And this leads to the start of the fall of Brutus and Cassius and the rise of Mark Antony. So in terms of community, what community we're seeing here is we are seeing Rome taking a stand against the conspirators and taking a stand for Caesar. They're beginning to riot. They're beginning to question everything. They're beginning to doubt the things that the conspirators are doing, because Antony in the speech undermined the conspirators. He undermined the fact that, he wasn't this horrible dictator that these senators thought. And when we go into, and this will lead in terms of flourishing for Antony, we're seeing Mark Antony rise to power. So in Act 4, Antony joins along with Caesar's adopted heir Octavius and Lepidus, and they form the second triumvirate, and they ended up creating at least the people that need to be executed because they were involved in Caesar's assassination. And it shows Antony's political ambition, and it shows, the drive that he has to not only avenge Caesar, but also take control of Rome. And basically through it all, they start assassinating the senators that were involved in it with the conspirators, and they start, beginning to plot to confront, Brutus and Cassius, the masterminds behind Caesar's assassination, the masterminds behind everything that went down, everything that's going on in terms of why it happened and when it happened. But also at the same time, the whole community of Rome is literally in shambles right now, because they're all turned on the conspirators. They're all turned away on, the things that are important, and they're starting to realize, okay, Caesar was not really a bad guy. The conspirators had him all wrong, and they just wanting to do what they could to get power for themselves, but also maintain a government through it. So we're seeing Antony go into power more. We're seeing his hunger to attain everything, and we're seeing the community of Rome begin to incite and begin to stand up for Caesar. So in the third episode, in the next episode, we are going to talk about the battle between Cassius, Brutus, and Mark Antony. And then we're going to talk about in the end, after the battle ends, of Mark Antony's rise to power, and basically how this also leads to tension within Rome and begins to show what Rome is going to look like from here on out. So that is all for today. I will see you in the next one.